Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, I've been watching a whole bunch of videos on feminism, on MGTOW, men going their own way, anti-feminism, and all kinds of interesting stuff. And I thought I'd share my view on why I particularly don't like feminism on the one hand, and on the other hand, I don't entirely agree with the notion of men going their own way. So I kind of think that, you know, as people, both men and women, it's evident that throughout history we have had a relationship of interdependence. That is, men needing women and women needing men. So technically, you know, as a matter of fact, uh, neither man nor woman can actually go their own way, not at least at a societal level. And so I cannot obviously see how either feminism or its sort of antithesis in later anti-feminism or non-feminist movements that are trying to fight against feminism really find the balance, because you kind of evolving now opposite extremes. Yes, feminism being the original extreme that acted as an extreme to what they saw as tyrannical patriarchy. So, which was a straw man argument basically. So they created this myth of tyrannical patriarchy, which basically held that men had this giant conspiracy against women, um, to sort of keep them enslaved, keep them oppressed, and to skew all things in favor of men, which is absolutely not true, totally absurd. Um, Actually, patriarchy throughout the ages has been an institution, rather than privileging men, was actually there to protect women. It was just nature's way of uh, perpetuating the species. And I think we get away from the argument that involves our fundamental existence, because in modern society, things have gotten so easy for us. We have sort of evolved away from our base and basic nature as men and women. And so patriarchy was actually just a way of protecting the seed. It's just a way of natural instinct of man to protect uh, what's his, to protect his offspring, to protect the seed, um, an instinct born within him, not because he decided that that's what he should do, but actually innately part of his biology and his genetic coding and his makeup. And that is simply to um, part of what has perpetuated us as a human species. So, patriarchy, in that sense, has, and by and large still works uh, to a large extent. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, those people on YouTube and on Facebook and with access to social media and who are reasonably educated and have access to academic debates, what they don't realize is that the vast majority of people in the world, I mean, we're talking like 80% of people in the world are poor, are functionally poor, live in places that are not safe, where law and order do not prevail to the extent that they do in most of our Western countries, and where it is still a very real reality that women are being more vulnerable and being uh, more or less victims of violent crimes such as rape, need the protection of men. And so, because many societies still operate on those bases, With that being the reality, it's just not feasible for anyone to say that women don't need men. Maybe modern, educated, fairly wealthy women in countries that has privileged women in this century uh, are able to say that to some extent. But by and large, the vast majority of people uh, need their patriarchal structure to further the functioning of their societies and how their societies function. And it's not something that is going to go away anytime soon, no matter how much people are crying foul, no matter how much um, your modern American privileged woman or British woman or uh, in the Western world are going to be able to try to debunk this uh, misogynistic uh, patriarchal culture, or that's how they see it anyway. It's just not going to happen. So let me just say that there's no point bitching about it, because uh, patriarchy is here to stay, and it has served its function for thousands of years, and it will continue to do so. So that on the one hand, let me just give the brief criticism of the MGTOW movement, men going their own way. And I've been listening to a lot of these videos, Coach Greg Adams, and some really interesting things, very educational. But I dislike this notion that women are the enemy, or that women are by and large um, out to get men, to uh, connive, to basically that they filled with some sort of malice and hatred towards men, or they are busy trying to weave some machinations with some hidden agenda and all these types of things. Okay, so just like to just kind of dispel that in an argument, I'd say that certainly there are women who have dealt men a low blow. Definitely, I'm not denying that. A woman demanding equal rights, um, but not willing to accept equal responsibility, sort of in the popular Western feminist kind of discourse, have sort of undermined men, because something has to give. If you are basically saying that women need to have more rights, and that results in men having less rights, of course men are going to be pissed off, right? Of course you're going to have this type of MGTOW thing was going to be the natural consequence of what you had instigated through feminism, by seeing women as rights as being sort of bottomless, that women can claim right after right after right, but still demand men to have to undertake the traditional responsibilities that men have taken over the centuries under patriarchy. So, what you essentially are asking of men is that you're saying, look, we want more rights. We want to be as free as you and as entitled as you, but without the level of responsibility that you have carried for centuries. At the same time, while we want to debunk patriarchy, we want to benefit from the privileges that patriarchy always offered us as women. We want to benefit from those privileges. In other words, we still want men to be the maintainers. We still want men to provide for us. We still want to blame men for all the failings that take place in our lives. At the same time, we want to have all the rights that they have. So I do get it. I mean, I get the argument. I understand where you're coming from. I mean, I'd be pissed too. I mean, fortunately, I'm Muslim. I don't have that problem. In my culture, women are somewhat forced to be women. by virtue of religion instigating that for us, in the sense that men are supposed to be the providers and maintainers of women in Islam, and women don't have the right to pursue a career if their husbands don't want them to. So it's as simple as uh, basically, to some extent, in many Muslim cultures, women are expected to be the homemakers, and men are expected to be providers, and that's it. The roles are defined. So we don't sort of have this problem, though we do have many other problems that come with those type of demands, because as Muslim men, um, we don't have the option to opt out of our roles in much the same way that women uh, don't have the option to opt out of their roles. Um, and then at times, women do have the option to opt out of their roles, and yet us men are not allowed to opt out of our roles. So we do kind of have some problems, which also uh, was influenced to some extent by some feminist ideologies, which historically developed within our own tradition, um, and that being uh, the understanding that while men are to be the providers and maintainers of their women, their wives, their sisters, their mothers, and so on, women have not sort of had a definitive role defined in the Islamic dispensation or Islamic law as such. So, although by and large culturally women are the homemakers, they are not defined legally as homemakers, and so they can opt out of being homemakers if they want to, in essence. Um, but men can never opt out of being providers and maintainers, and so that does sort of, when feminism, creeps into our cultures, it does create much of the same chaos that it does in Western culture and in you know uh, and we could sort of have similar complaints that we are hearing coming from the MGTOW movement, um, but still to a lesser extent, because of religion and culture still largely being old world in a sense. The same culture that we profess to follow, or the same kind of religious ideas, it's found right there in Christianity too. It was part of traditional Western society. It was part of traditional society the world over, basically. Whether it was in Taoist society, Confucianism, whether it was Chinese society, Japanese society, the world over, uh, had a largely patriarchal family structure where the man is the head of the house. Yes, there's strands of matriarchy in Chinese culture, but by and large, empires and civilization never really functioned well on matriarchy. In any case, that's my opinion. So, where I disagree with the MGTOW movement and is that you know, it's not going to help men to boycott women. It's not going to help men to boycott women. I mean, unless, of course, you're gay, right? But aside from that, um, men are generally going to feel that they need women, and a lot more than just for sex. So, I mean, let's get it straight. I mean, many of the speakers I've heard, you kind of allude to needing women for sex, getting sex on demand, and take it from a Muslim man. I have more than one wife. I get sex on demand. My wives are obedient. They are homemakers. I am the breadwinner. They are obedient, etc. And I will say that you will soon figure out, those of you who haven't, that women play a far more meaningful role in the lives of men, um, outside of sex. And these things involve having an intimate relationship. It involves bringing different perspectives to life, bringing in the female sort of approach to things, which can be very helpful. And so I just cannot agree with this idea that uh, men are better off without women. And frankly, I just think that's just untrue. Men are never going to be better off without women. But it is necessary for men to, and I know a lot of women are not going to like me to say this, but get your woman under control, basically. It's important for you as a man to establish yourself as the head of your family. You are the authority in your home, and your wives or your woman have to be obedient to you in ways that it matters, in places that it matters. I'm not saying that a man has to be a tyrant in his home, that everything he says is the law or some bullshit like that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that in ways that it matters, a woman has to obey her husband. And it's one of the things that I noticed in many of these discourses we shy away from saying. And I will just put it out there. And what do I mean in ways that it matters? Okay. I mean, frankly, that when it comes to her chastity, when it comes to her association with people out there in the world, when it comes to whether she works or whether she doesn't work, or even whether it comes to where she works, uh, these are things that has to come through the husband, has to invariably come through the husband, has to be negotiated with the husband. But finally, uh, these are things in which women have to obey their husbands. Okay, because as a family unit, the thing that counts most, at least for a man, is that his family is being taken care of, and the primary caregiver of your kids will be your wife. In a traditional family structure, it is your wife. So the way I take it, and my take on the whole issue is that, look, there are careers and fields in which women are very much needed, and women um, do contribute positively to the economy when they pursue careers. However, there is a long-term strategy that is being overlooked in trying to uplift the immediate economic situation in a country, and that is, what about the future generation? So my take is that a woman's purpose is best served when she's at home, when she's mothering her own children. And it's proven that children who are mothered grow up to be uh, more functional human beings, grow up to be able to better contribute to society, and grow up to be more of an economic benefit in the long term on the economy of a country, and less of a liability. They do not depend on social grants and things like that. So, woman being at home is a very, actually, a very forward-thinking, um, sort of way of life, to have women at home, to have mothers in the home, to have women as homemakers, contrary to what we've done the social experiment where we've tried to undo that function, and it's resulted in society being downgraded, retrogression. It's resulted in kids growing up without parents, because the dad is at work, the mom is at work. Who looks after the kids, right? Other people, right? Uh, Half the time we don't know what's going on in our kids' lives. We don't know who they're associating with. We don't know what type of ideas they have running through their heads. Things like kids going to school and shooting up everyone with a gun. Uh, those parents didn't know what was happening in those kids' lives. I mean, what is he doing with a gun? Where did he get the gun from? What type of ideas? What YouTube videos is he watching? What radicalized things in his life or friends or literature? What is he? We don't know any of these things because you have two parents that don't have time for those kids. So men need women. Families are important. Women need men. It's equal. Men need women just as much as women need men because women help men sort of fulfill their purpose and also become uh, uh, more progressive, more beneficial to society, more functioning, more driven, more hardworking. I mean, I look at myself, I look at other men, and I can tell you that married men who have families are prepared to work longer hours if they have to. They study more. They upgrade themselves more frequently. They look for higher income jobs. They sometimes are busy with a side hustle. And in their seeking greater economic prosperity, they are also improving the conditions of their societies, of their countries, of their economies, and essentially of the world. So you don't want to create the type of man that uh, lacks ambition, first of all, because he's not able to be with a woman that is a woman. Okay, a lot of men have been saying that women are not women anymore. We don't want this, right? So you don't want to create the type of man that sees the world as his playground. Sure, I mean, if you don't have wives and you don't have kids, I mean, you could rack up millions of dollars quite easily as a single man, you know? I mean, by the time you're 40, you'd be sitting on a few millions just by doing some ordinary job because you're not having to spend a whole lot of money, of course, right? But are you really serving your purpose as a man in the world? It's the question I'm asking, you know? Um, to what benefit are you really to greater society, you know? Um, so I don't buy the whole MGTOW thing, I mean, there's a lot of good advice coming from these people. There's a lot of uh, things, tips for men to not sort of be pussies, like don't sort of run after women, don't suck up to women. And yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's no need to do that. There's lots of women. Um, there's lots of women one could marry. Um, Certainly, if you're Muslim, you could even marry two, three, four women. So, I mean, you ain't gotta take nobody's shit actually as a man in the world. And I think men have been sold that illusion that in order for them to be good husbands, good partners, they gotta be prepared to take a lot of shit. Um, so they prove themselves to be patient, to be loving, to prove their love to the woman. And of course, all that's bullshit. I mean, anyone would tell you. I mean, for centuries, men have been saying that's bullshit. You know, it's just recently uh, the media and especially Americans and this American movies and things shows this house daddy type of guy. He's got like one kid on the arm and the other kid on the other arm, and he's changing diapers and he's making milk bottles and he's running around like crazy and going to crush and then trying to go to his job and then picking the kids up from crush, and he's just with the kids and he's the daddy, and this whole daddy bullshit thing. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, kids need to know who their fathers are, first of all. They need to have a relationship with their fathers, especially one of respect. and that's it. You ain't never gotta wipe their bottoms, you know. You gotta teach them manners. They gotta have those times with you. And by the way, kids tend to remember that. You know, you kids spend all day with the mom. You know, and the mom could be saying something all the time. You know, the mom could be saying to the kid, you know what, I think you'll be a great doctor, and the kid would be like, yeah, okay. And one day the dad comes in, you know, and he's talking to his friend, and he says, you know what, I think my son or my daughter, you know, could be a great doctor. And the kid would go to the mom and say, you know what, mom, dad said to Uncle Mike that I could be a great doctor. And the kid will never forget that the dad said that, but the mom says it every day. So the point is, dads and men have a greater responsibility to society, to get married, to have kids, to be responsible, but not to be consumed in those roles. And I think because men take on greater roles outside of family, outside of wives, outside of children, towards industry, towards technology, towards furthering science, towards building bridges, towards uh, averting wars. There's a whole world out there that men, by and large, are negotiating, have had to negotiate, and we don't have time to sit around and play housey housey all day with a woman. It's just not a it's just not something we should be doing. The fact is, in as selfish as it sounds, we marry women who are suitable for us, who are going to benefit us, and who are there for our convenience so that we can go out in society and make a difference and feature in ways that we need to, not for our egos, but to further civilization. It's as simple as that. And women either get along and go along or should get lost. Get another one. Get a woman that's gonna support you. Get a woman that's gonna be with it. Get a woman that understands that her role is crucial in your life, and your life is never only gonna be about her. And I think that's kind of where the balance lies. So for all your MGTOW guys out there, my advice is don't write women off. Be a man. Women are there to play a support role in your life, in your ambitions, and in so doing, you are playing a support role in their lives also. Okay, because by having kids, by having a family, you are playing into the biggest sort of dream that women have had for centuries. I mean, every woman, whether she admits it openly, um, secretly, on a subconscious level, on a biological level, she wants to fall pregnant. And if you facilitate that, you have basically facilitated a very, very big thing for her by impregnating her. But not only that, you go on to be a father for this child. You go on to provide for her and this child. You help her um, overcome her vulnerabilities. You help protect her in those vulnerable times in her life, where she is not able to efficiently provide for herself during that time. And even if she is, it's done with great difficulty. Women generally, after they give birth, do not want to get up after a month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months, whatever, depends on the country you live in, how much maternity leave they give. A lot of women feel the strong inclination to want to stay home with that child. Guess what? If you're a working woman, you don't have a man who provides for you, you can't do that. You gotta get up and go work. You gotta leave that child, get up, and go work. And so men facilitate the possibility for you not to do that. Men facilitate the possibility for you to look after your own children. So the greatest female ambition throughout history is being facilitated by men who bust their asses to facilitate it. And you call it what you want. I call that a plug-in of patriarchy. It is what it is. Men are men, woman are woman. Embrace it, be it, and move along. Thank you very much.